Beans, black beans, green beans, red beans, mung beans, chickpeas, anything, those things cost less than $1 per pound. In most places, dried in the whole food or the bulk. And if you order bulk, you can get even cheaper. You can get over 100 pounds of beans. $20 for the Mylar bags. Great, after the first month, you're able to store over 100 pounds of food by just not going to a restaurant twice. Now, these are the kind of lifestyle changes I'm talking about, is consciously thinking about that. Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum. In the media, overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output, but very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time, cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David Dubine. Welcome back for the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. Revolution Radio, Studio A, 10 p.m. to midnight, every Thursday. The true information of what's going on, because the government's just not giving it to us anymore. They're masking the crop losses because they're so all-encompassing. And you take into consideration what's happening in China. A Bloomberg article, 46% food price increases in China 1 year. So think about that. Their food prices increased 50% in a year. Now, I lived and worked there for several years. And what I know and understand about the migrant worker phenomenon, you have people who live in the countryside, and they come to work in the factories in big cities. They're from little towns that it's hard to find even on like a local road atlas. Might be like a couple thousand people in a village. They're from some of those places. Opportunity is not there. It's just purely agriculture, 100%. Fun to travel these places. When you go there, it's very quiet, very, back in the past a little bit, super friendly people, very welcoming, incredibly safe to walk around. Since we spoke Chinese, could read, we would get those local road atlases and go, hey, there's some old temples out here. Hey, there's an old ancient site out here, but it's not really a big one like Xi'an or anything, but it's out there. Let's go. So we can even get on local buses, go out and just walk along through the countryside, and it was great for a weekend. But the migrant workers, and what they do is they come from these small towns, and then they come into the cities to earn money. And then they send the money home. And they work. All they do is work, go to sleep, get up and work again. Sometimes they don't even get a day off in the week. They work 28 straight days in a month, and they might take 2 days off for the whole month, something like this. And it's usually 12-hour days. Well, with these food price increases and the super gigantic rent price increases, a lot of this is no longer viable for the migrant workers inside China. So what they're going to do is start returning home, which is an interesting factoid because as we move forward, if food becomes really expensive, living in the countryside is going to be much more of an opportunity to create money than it would working in a city when the cities start to have more difficulty. We're already seeing the trade war. That's a slowdown. We saw what happened in 2008 and 2009 with China when everybody stopped buying across the planet. They contracted as well, but greatly, incredibly, to the point the government had to step in and be like, all right, it's all going to be good. But this time they're having bank runs and Lehman Brothers style, too big to fail failures all over the country. They're barely propping up their banking system. That's another interesting factoid you might want to look into. Zero Hedge covers this quite a bit on the bank failures over in China. The amount of collateralized debt they're using for stock. Now they're coming down to their first round where they have to pay back on their bond issuance for the companies, but they can't pay it. They can't pay back the loans that they took out because they pledged their stock at that price at the time to get the loans. And now when they come to sell the stock to get at least the principal back on the loan, not there. That doesn't even cover that cost. So forget the interest. They can't even get the principal back. Sometimes a loss of 80%. Now the bond issuance due, can't pay that. So there's some real problems in China at the moment. Swine flu wiped out pigs. Food prices are increasing. Rent, you can get a house. This is the craziest thing. And Taipei is the same way. It's insane. You can get a beachfront house in Hawaii for a lower price than you can get a 3-bedroom apartment in a city in Asia, in either Taipei or Beijing or Shanghai or anywhere like this. You can get a beachfront home in Hawaii cheaper than just an apartment in a building. So literally a beachfront house in Hawaii is half price for just buying an apartment in a city here. So what do you think a migrant worker who's making a few $100s a month is? Do you think they're going to be able to afford that? Absolutely not. So the rents are getting really high there anyway. Absurd rents now. Absurd food pricing. So, according to this article, with this newest rise in food prices, if it goes up another 25%, that will be the catalyst to make a lot of migrant workers move home, because then they will transition to the agricultural society. They're going to go back and they're going to find foods more valuable than money. And this is really, really interesting. The transition of society. So it's beginning in China. And speaking of cycles, my new book with my co-author Bill Porter, Climate Revolution, a must-read for understanding our sun-driven climate. As we progress deeper into this new Eddy grand solar minimum, weather extremes leading to global food scarcity and higher food prices are here now. This book describes the expected changes, how to survive and thrive during future challenging times, and also practical preparations. The entire book is interactive with over 250 links, so you can click and go out to the scientific aspect of what we're talking about with the repeating cycles in this grand solar minimum. The science is explained so you understand the mechanisms. The solutions are there because we know we're going to face these exact same problems again that were faced in the Maunder minimum, the Sporer minimum, the Wolf minimum. Find designs for building greenhouses, grow guides, beam soil techniques, as well as bioreactors to create your own growth hormones for the soil. Available now, the new Adapt 2030 Climate Revolution. The link's in the description box below. China lost at least 30%. We're already up at 34%, because I do my own research about China because I have a couple guys who help me. Research corn production in China because the U.S. and China produce 60% of the world's corn. So in order to get a better gauge of what's happening with the U.S. market and how much the prices are going to rise back there this year, you have to take into consideration what's happening in China and then also Brazil. If you couple those together, you get a pretty good indication on where the corn production is going. And then you take a look over in Europe and you can see Bulgaria got wiped out. Look at those statistics. Bulgaria produces 13% of the corn in the EU. They just lost half of it. China's down at least 30% at the bare minimum. I'll be conservative and say 30% loss of all corn in China. And then we take a look over in the United States, and it is smoke and mirrors. People like to make fun of China, go, oh, they skew the figures, oh, they're so dishonest with the figures, it's very difficult to get any truthful information out of China. Look at the USDA and see how they are smoke and mirrors all the way. They are trying to mask these crop losses. I am telling you, this is the biggest crop loss I think we've had in the last 100 years. They're trying to not spook people. Because what if I came out in the news every single day and said, your food price is going to double. Your food price is going to double by Christmas. Might even be more in some places. Now, if this was the prevailing news story theme for the day, how do you think people would react? Just think about day one on the whole news release across the United States. You know how we get some stories that move through the news cycle and then they stick around for a little bit longer than normal and beaten into the ground again and again and again and again. Now follow that pattern and then just move it over into your food price is going to double, maybe triple. Your food price is going to double, maybe triple. Your food price is going to double, maybe triple. How do you think people are going to react? I think, my personal opinion again here, I think there would be an enormous amount of hoarding in the beginning. I think people would run out and the store shelves would be empty, and as soon as the trucks came back in, it would be empty again. And as long as the news stories ran that your food price is going to double, people are going to buy it today for a 50% discount. If people are fighting in the store for a 10% piece of junk that they get from another country, and you've seen all these videos, people fist fighting for like 20% off of an item. That means nothing. It's a piece of plastic junk. Throwing people to the floor for that 10% discounted trinket. 50% off food sale? Oh, wow. I wonder what people would do. how it would actually affect the mind that, oh, wait, why is the food price rising? Then you get into this whole other gamut of problems that are behind just the food price rises. Because normal waking sentient people are going to go, my food price is going to double, What's causing it? And it won't take long for most people to dive into some research and then stumble across stuff like myself or Christian at Ice Age Farmer, Oppenheimer Ranch Project, how about Ben at Suspicious Observers, Mavstar, Grand Solar Minimum channel out there, Jake and Mari doing their thing, John Casey, Valentina Zarkova, Electroverse, IceAgeNow.info, SOT.net. It won't take long for the populace to run into this information and go, whoa, I never heard of that. And once they really discover what's behind the food price rises, they're going to change everything in their life, their spending habits. Do you realize how much I've shifted my spending habits since learning about all this? The before me was then. The now new me, the way I spend money, is completely different. Like I don't spend money like I used to, not even close. What I do is I use it getting ready in the future now. That is not going into the economy in terms of the way it used to. It ain't going to a restaurant, I tell you what. That money that I could save at a restaurant is enough where I can buy some Mylar bags, some oxygen packs, get the food, the bulk food itself, and then pack up 100 pounds of beans for the same amount of money I would have spent in a restaurant. Those are the kind of decisions I've consciously made to buy the vacuum, to buy the heat sealer, instead of going to a restaurant. Think about that. Every time, if you go out even just 2 or 3 times a month, I would say 2 times a month, the money you would save after just the first month of going out. So let's say you spent $100, and a lot of people might spend, okay, we'll use 100. That's an easy number. So that $100, 2 times. So you got $200 in the month that you save by not just going to restaurants. Now think about it in terms of food preparation, what you can do with that $200. You go to the bulk bean section or the bulk food section, oh my gosh, you can buy a pound of oats for less than $1. Already in a Mylar bag, vacuum sealed from a company. That's pretty good on the sealing there. So let's say, over here in Asia, it costs you about $1 or so for, 500 grams, because everything's on kilograms. So about half a kg for $1 for oats. And those are generic oats. Those are instant generic oats, not like super high brand like Quaker or something. Those cost more. I think if you bought 10 of those a month, after a year, you'd have 120. You have to rotate stuff, but think about that. Beans, black beans, green beans, red beans, mung beans, chickpeas, anything, those things cost less than $1 per pound. In most places, dried in the whole food or the bulk. And if you order bulk, you can get even cheaper. You can get over 100 pounds of beans. $20 for the Mylar bags. Great, after the first month, you're able to store over 100 pounds of food by just not going to a restaurant twice. Now, these are the kind of lifestyle changes I'm talking about, is consciously thinking about that. Where do you divert your money to get ready? Salt, my friends, salt. You can go into any of these salt lamp stores and then ask them, hey, do you have any broken ones that you're not going to sell? Because I'll buy them from you. I don't even want the parts. You can keep all the electronic gear out of it. I just want to buy your block of salt. And they will be more than happy to get rid of it because they can't sell it. It's dead items for them. TrueLeafMarket.com. I really want to talk about growing your own food, which will be a necessity moving forward. And there's so many ways that we can go about growing different types of vegetables that we're going to need. Microgreens are incredibly nutritious. They're super fast to grow. In less than a week, you can have something that you can eat. Also, sprouts. We can get those a little bit taller, a little more dense, a little bit larger volume on the vegetation mass coming off of there. So how do you know what kind of sprouts to grow? How about wheatgrass or herbs? What about different types of herbs that we can add to our foods? Now, what I just described to you, there's a full range of starter guides there at TrueLeafMarket.com for you to take a look at. Even if it's just for your own knowledge and you don't purchase something from them, at least get the information so you know how to grow microgreens, you know how to grow sprouts, you understand what some of the herbs are for. TrueLeafMarket.com. Use the link below and give yourself the gift of organic and heirloom seeds. Salt is so valuable. I can't describe to you how valuable salt will be in the future. It will be worth its weight in at least silver. It used to be worth its weight in gold. Salt was a heavily traded item, and it was so valuable. Travel on the Silk Road. Go down to Mali, Timbuktu area, salt trade coming out of the central desert there. Those salt bricks were equal to their weight in gold. That's why they'd have 1,000 men on a caravan. Everybody got paid and they delivered the salt. Salt is so cheap these days. You got sea salt, Himalayan salt, more back with the natural salts. I mean, these things cost dollars, you know. And again, you can get like a pound of salt, and if it doesn't come in some specialty thing wrapped in a bow, it's inexpensive. And especially if you buy it in bulk, 5-pound brick that's not even chipped into anything, just a 5-pound brick of pink salt from the Himalaya, that costs not much. But in the future, that salt is going to be incredibly tradable for anything. Now, this is the world we're moving into, and just knowing these types of things, if I can spend $5 on salt now, and then I could get an animal in the future for that, chickens or so, I don't know what you trade. But that's kind of where the mind needs to go, is the value that it has now in 3 or 4 years, the value will be completely different just the way we operate in our society. Seeds as well. You got to look, are these things stored properly? Different mentality, thriving and surviving through. You control the simulation, you move the knobs and levers in your reality. Everything is available for you in the future. There is no scarcity for you if you're listening to this message. Let's take a look back in the archaeological past here and see, do we see anything about cosmic cycles in 6,000-year-old cave paintings in the Czech territory? Well, we know for sure that the Czech lands was what the Czech Republic back 400 years ago was called, the Czech lands. Now, if we go back through and we look back through the Czech lands in Bohemia, which is the area that borders Germany, we find a pattern there, discernible, easy to spot, plain as day, without glasses. A pattern emerges out of the 3,000-year rain cycle. Rain, drought, rain, drought. They're doing a dance. We're going into the drought. For the next 30 years or so, it's going to get really dry in these areas. Now, you got to remember, these are major crop grow zones. So looking back in the past, further back in the past, what can we find? Because these caves have been inhabited in this area. They're finding a connection between the Lascaux caves in France, 17,000 years ago, interconnected with this whole set of caves up here in the Czech lands. They're putting the habitation at this one at 6,000 years ago. Now, what they're finding is star patterns. Now, why are there star patterns on a cave? Couldn't they just go outside and look at the stars? The stars would have been way, way, way clearer back then. There would have been almost no pollution in our atmosphere. And when fronts came through, they wouldn't have been full of metals and nanoparticulates in our atmosphere milkying out the sky. It would have been clear skies. So what is it with them? Why do they put specific constellations and stars on a cave roof? Now, why would they spend the time to do that? It makes no sense to me. Like, you can go outside and see it just as clear. But you're going to come in a cave, spend the time to make the pigmentation from different plants, berries, roots, flowers, stems, and charcoal, and mix it together for the different colors, from the ochre to the yellow to the black. And you're going to spend all that time when you could be growing food or doing something to enhance your caveman life, according to the specialty scientists and the experts. They just were cavemen, right? Go invent the wheel, dude. But they spend their time and energy to create pigments and then come in and paint it inside a cave. What was so important about that? What were they leaving us that message for? You know, these are cycles. This is in the Moravian cave in Borno. Now, they're also finding that through the various ages that there are markings that have been overlooked, magically overlooked. So when they're finding in there, they got an inkling that there's some star messages inside here. So they're taking a look now, trying to put what they perceive as these constellations into a star mapping program and then bring it back into the past and see if it's overlapping with the climate cycle. And I applaud them for doing that. Very well done. And I can't really say the name here, Zajicek, I think, or Mr. Zajicek, research lead there on the team. Thanks for doing that. Appreciate your efforts. Star mapping to see if we can match climate cycles, because we're in another climate cycle right now. This grand solar minimum is another cycle. Now, what's most interesting is when I talked about the rainfall pattern in the beginning of the program, Northern Africa and the desert southwest of the U.S. are matching step for step right now with a 4,000-year repeat in the rain cycle, 4,000 to 4,500. Both places are matching exactly. Northern Africa, now I'm talking about Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, that whole area, and then the desert southwest Four Corners area, and also down into parts of Texas, down into Mexico, the Baja Peninsula getting way wetter because the North American monsoon is shifting. Instead of rolling over the California mountains, Sierra Nevadas, etc., that's why the area's been so dry so long over in Nevada. Now the flow is coming from the south, going over the Baja Peninsula up on the other side of the mountains, and that's why they're getting an enormous amount of new moisture up in these areas. Baja, Texas, Colorado, all these areas. Above normal moisture. Well, that would make sense. If you're repeating a 4,000-year cycle, we'd have no types of records going back that far as to truly how much rain we're going to get and how much moisture is going to fall in these areas. To be announced. But one thing to be announced is, I did this video back in 2016, talking about primary water after talking to Deborah Tavares. Unbeknownst to me, I did a database search back then just on land registries, and the amount of billionaires that had bought land was astounding. Everything was like 10,000 acres or bigger. The entire desert southwest got gobbled up by billionaires. Now, why is that? I couldn't put it together until just recently that the 4,000-year rain cycle is coming back there. Now I understand. It's going to be a new grow zone. So again, mapping out star patterns on caves, and they are at 6,000 years. What went on back then 6,000 years ago? Oh, Western Africa gets really rainy at that time. Hey, guess what happened? Massive floods in Mauritania, massive floods in Mali, massive floods in Morocco. That could be part of the rain belt on the 4,000 year as well. But what about this whole central area? Chad. Record rains for the third year in a row. Lakes are refilling. Central North Africa, that's the area that really, this is the 6,000-year rain pattern pegs right in the middle of. So you got different cycles going on in terms of Africa. It can also be broken up. So, when we find these same 4,000-year rain cycle, problem for Tanzania, problem for Kenya, they get super, super dry. So what you would look for, if it's indeed true, I'm just doing my best for the research. If it does follow the pattern, Kenya and Tanzania should be going into a drought. They already are, but it should go into a mega drought. The famine alert network's already up for Tanzania and Kenya, those parts of Somalia. But then as we leave that coastal area, see again, it's got to be another monsoonal shift, just like the North American monsoon shifting, for sure the African monsoon shifting. Intertropical convergence zone shifting. The top corner of northeast Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Somalia are going to get drier. Whereas we even go a few hundred miles, 500 miles to the west, right into the desert region, Sudan, going to get way wetter from Sudan west. I've been mapping these out where the Chinese investments are, and I like to dig into these old mid-Holocene rainfall cycles. I do a lot of geeky research like this. I like it. So where the Chinese investment projects are, if you overlay that where the mid-Holocene rainfall cycles were, where the lakes formed, where the old mega lakes were in the middle of the Sahara, in the middle of Central Africa, up in the middle of the deserts now, you'll find that the Chinese investments are right on those same areas. It's more than a 90% correlation, which shocked me. And then once I started to really dig into this and get deeper, the database is no longer available. Imagine that. So to try to put these areas overlapping each other, now why would the Chinese go out in the middle of Chad, build massive railways to nowhere? Oh, I understand now. Those are going to be railways right through the grain growing zones. So, the ancient history here mapping up star maps on caves. Again, what happened back then? Why were they spending the time to leave us a message and a warning? Because I'm going to come over to Chaco Canyon, food scarcity. This is from Popular Archaeology. Now what they're finding is the ruins up here at Chetroqueti in the Chaco Canyon. This is New Mexico. Chaco Canyon hosts numerous small dwellings and a handful of multi-story buildings known as the Great Houses, or you know them as cliff dwellings. Based on these structures, researchers think that it was a bustling metropolis, not a town, not a settlement, a bustling metropolis, 1000 AD. Now the rains are coming back. So at the very minimum, we have a 1,000-year repeating rainfall cycle happening in the desert southwest, at the minimum. I also am a very much a fan of history, and I looked around these areas And what I found is these cliff dwellings are really cool. They give you some close-in images, but they don't really ever give you the super wide-out image as to where this place is. Like you get a close enough image where you can see the bricks, and then you can see the cliff face. And then you see the dwellings within cliff face, and it's just like, oh, okay, wow, they're in a cliff face, and you can kind of see the top of the wall, and you can see maybe a side of a wall. But the most interesting thing is you need to pan back about 2, 3, 4 miles to see where the actual mesa is. They're up several hundred feet, so if there's a 200-foot flood coming through, they're still above it. There was massive, massive inundations at that time, something so far off the scale that they don't want to tell you in prehistory what happened there. They were running from plasma discharges, they were trying to protect themselves from multi-pound hail, and they were trying to protect themselves from massive 100-foot floods come rolling down the mesas off the San Juan Plateau there. This video is brought to you by our friends at TrueLeafMarket.com. Heirloom and organic seeds for any grow zone on our planet.